Hello everyone, this is Robert, and these are some of the accessories for the xTool P2 CO2 Laser. In front of me I've got the conveyor, little conveyor extensions, and then off camera I have the riser base, and in this video I'm going to be kind of doing a little bit of an unboxing, initial impressions, a little overview just to give you a better idea of what they look like. So let's get started. As always, I have this video all tagged up so you can check out the different chapters, skip around, and find the section that is most interesting to you. So before we get started, I do want to apologize a little bit for dragging my feet on the P2 reviews. It's sitting right over there. I've had it for quite a while, and I did have these for like the last week or so, but there's been a lot of stuff going on. It's been a very busy time for me. We're going through a large-scale kitchen remodel. Decided to tear up the whole kitchen and completely redo that. So that's taking a lot of my time because, of course, I'm going super overboard on that. We also just recently purchased a mountain home up in the foothills outside of Boulder. So we're kind of dealing with that, getting some renovation stuff done on that. I also have a special little secret project that I have over there that will be announced sometime in May, so that's coming about. And then I have all these reviews and other stuff going on, so just a lot of stuff happening. So what I want to cover in this video is I want to just kind of give you an impression of what these things look like, what they feel like, just kind of show them to you, wave them in front of the camera, tap on them, stuff like that. I have the automatic conveyor and I've got the riser base. These are two features that I think are pretty unique to the P2. I haven't seen any other lasers out there that utilize the pass-through with kind of this automated feeding mechanism. So I think that's actually pretty interesting. And then the riser base is kind of critical to using any of these special features, especially if you're going to do like the curved engraving. You need something to actually raise the laser up from it. So both of those features are kind of necessary and unique to these special features of the P2. That being said, there's a reason I'm not going to be reviewing the rotary axis, because one, most lasers have a rotary axis. It's not anything new, it's not anything different, it's gonna rotate the thing. And then secondly, I've never really done rotary stuff before. I don't engrave tumblers or mugs. That's just kind of not really what I do. So I'm not gonna be the best one to tell you how that works. I'm just gonna put it on there, hook it up, and be like, it spins. So I'm not the right person to talk about that. So let's dig into the conveyor first, and then we'll go into the riser base. So here is a better look at the conveyor. And like I said, this is a pretty cool feature of the xTool P2, the fact that you can actually feed material into this and have it motorized, feed it across. It's basically just an extension of the y-axis. And if you look at the cable, yeah, you're just plugging a stepper motor into where the y-axis would normally drive the laser head back and forth. And if we flip this, if we flip this upside down, you can see there's a stepper motor, and that drives these little feeder mechanisms on the bottom. And then on the top, we've got, is that sitting right? There we go. On the top, we have this little, I guess a scissor lift. If I adjust this, you can see that the top rollers adjust up and down. Pretty simple stuff. I think this says that it can work with up to about 14 millimeters thickness, which is actually pretty surprising. I was expecting a lot thinner. And then on the back side, it comes with a separate bar. It took me a while to figure out what this is, but this sits on top of the back roller, and this is used for very thin material. Normally the material would just kind of bunch up and it would have an issue coming over this lip, but you put this little roller down and then it can kind of pinch in between that, so you can use this with relatively thin. Construction-wise, this thing is surprisingly well built. This is a nice aluminum rail up front. The side pieces are plastic, but this is metal, and everything just kind of has a nice, robust feel to it. I mean, this isn't crazy. It's not like, you know, a tank, like everyone says, oh, it's built like a tank. Nothing's built like a tank. Tanks are built like tanks. But this thing is relatively sturdy, and you do have the manual feed over here, which feels great. The one thing that I will note is these little rollers down here, they feel awful to touch. And I mean this in the best possible way. They're kind of like this rough knurled finish. and you don't want to touch them. They feel bad on your hand because they're so sharp and grippy. Like if you've ever felt really poorly knurled things, it's very sharp and it doesn't feel pleasant. That's what these feel like. And I'm saying this is a good thing. That is going to grab on material. And I've already kind of played with it a little bit. It doesn't take much pressure from this top piece to actually grab onto the material and move it through. So I was pretty impressed with that. I know I'm totally doing this out of order, but here is the box. I didn't do really like an unboxing or anything because there's no setup involved, but just in case you care, it's really, really well packaged in there. Covered by foam, you're not going to have any shipping issues with this whatsoever. The conveyor kit standard comes with this conveyor rail setup. Basically, you need something on either side of the machine to support the material when it's being fed in and out. I think you can do something like 96 inches, maybe up to, I think, 110 on some materials, so very, very, very long. And this is just kind of the standard, but then you can also get extension sets, which the extension set is basically exactly what you're seeing here. And they're these 4 little rails. It's actually aluminum extrusion with a little bit of plastic pieces on top, some plastic pieces on the end. They've got these little plastic rollers on it. Overall, these are nice. They're very lightweight and very simplistic. I really have no issues with these whatsoever, but it's kind of coupled with something that's kind of strange. It has these really nice metal feet pieces, and then you have this base piece. Look at how thick and chunky that is, and these just kind of slide onto it like that. So they're just kind of riser feet, and I really don't know why the design is this way. These are pretty heavy duty. They stay pretty planted. I don't know, maybe this allows for a little bit of pivoting in this direction. I'm not really sure, but you need to kind of assemble these together as the riser feet. And these feet on the rail like that will equal the height of the machine. So this will plug directly into the machine so that you can feed smooth on one flat surface. So the idea is that you have 2 of these on the in feed, 2 of these on the out feed. The thing also comes with a really extensive manual. It actually has a lot of instructions with it. I haven't hooked this up and played with it yet because I have to assemble it on the riser base and do a whole bunch of other things. But what I'm led to believe with this is you do need to kind of build this into the machine. This isn't something you can just kind of plug in, use, and unplug. You kind of have to build it into the machine, not permanently, but it does need to kind of go in there and stay in there for a bit. And because you need space in front of the machine and behind the machine, you're not going to be able to set on the traditional workbench. You're going to have to, spin it around and have a lot of space on either side. So just something to consider, but we'll get into that later. But it is nice to see that it includes a pretty involved little manual for it. So what I just showed you was the conveyor feeder, and this is one of the extension kits. So depending on which configuration you buy, you can get multiple of these extension kits. And all they include is just what I just showed, 4 rails, the feet, and then the 4 little base plate things. Each one of these is about, I think, 21 inches? Yep. 21 inches long, so if you need to extend the work further out, you would just need to get a couple of these extensions. The base one just comes with 4, and then you can get these in packages of 4. And the cool thing is they just kind of, interlock together, if I can do this right. There we go. So they just kind of slide in together like that, and then you have a much longer rail. And so in theory, if you want to do the maximum length, you would need 2 of these additional extensions. So you'd have 2 on one side and 2 on the other side, and that would extend it out to the full usable length of the feeder. So the last little thing I wanted to show you is kind of how everything attaches. You can see that there's this like groove along the front side with this larger cutout on the ends. And you basically just take the end of it, slide in there. I'm doing this reverse on camera. And it just kind of slides, and there is a screw that you can put on to fix it, but that actually makes it kind of easy to where you can just kind of feed this in, slide along, and that is how you got the extensions, and this is mirrored on the back side as well. So I don't know, it's pretty clever, and I always like pointing out clever design. Okay, let's talk about the P2 riser base. As you can see, it is extremely well packaged, and there is some assembly required. When I first opened this up and saw it, I thought, okay, this is going to take some time, but looking back through my time-lapse videos that I did on this, it actually didn't take that long. I'd say maybe a half an hour start to finish, and you know, that's with me setting up the camera and documenting some things and making notes, things like that for the video. So it really didn't take that long. It was a lot more straightforward than I thought. The other thing I noticed when putting this together was from the promotional pictures and my first impressions of the machine, like if you were to watch my first overview of the machine, you would maybe think that this was a lot more plastic. However, there's nothing plastic in this whatsoever. I was actually very pleasantly surprised by this, that the entire thing is metal. And I'm not really sure who made that decision. It's a good decision for us. Like, we like it as the consumers, but this is really expensive to have all these custom extrusions made just for the riser base. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and it goes together relatively easy. There's, you know, nothing really hard. There's nothing to mess up here. I think the only gripe I have is the mechanism for how the doors open and close. Now, granted, you're probably not going to be using those that much, but I really wish they had done something other than these simple magnet catches, and I'll get into that when I show the finished thing. But overall, very simple assembly, you know, half an hour, really leisurely pace, and everything is actually pretty high quality, and it's a very, very sturdy base for the machine. So thumbs up on that. So here is what the riser base looks like all built up. And the whole thing is nice and metal, and it is a very sturdy, robust thing. I think this would be a good base for the machine, and because it's so open, yeah, kind of cool. A couple little features here. In the front, you've got these slats. Let me see if I can show you this a little bit better. These are slats that run along the side, and let me see, you can kind of see the lettering over here up the side on them, and this kind of corresponds to where you want to put the tray. And this kind of works like if you're going to do the rotary goes at this level. If you're going to do the feed conveyor, it kind of goes at this level, and all these things correspond to the manual, so that is pretty interesting. As you can see, we have an opening in the front, we have one in the back, and then there's one on this side as well. The one on this side is actually storage for the slats, because when you do that conveyor thing, you need to take the slats out, and if you're doing anything that feeds down into this, you need to take that slat bed out and then put it over in here. So they give you kind of a nice little place to store all that. Now, in the previous segment, I was talking about how I don't really like how the doors operate. Maybe I'm just being picky. This is like the second take, and I've done that each time. Has this little push latch thing. Push open, push close, push open, push close, and it has a magnet on that side. Granted, I'm doing this in reverse, reaching over the thing. It's kind of awkward, but I think ideally you're supposed to just press this and it opens, but obviously you can tell that it just will fall down. It's not my favorite thing. Is this going to be a door that you're going to be accessing all the time? Probably not, but it would have been nice if they had like some kind of slow close rotary damper. Yeah, if they had a rotary damper on that, that would be cool. And the one in the back is the exact same way. I think that's the only real gripe that I have about this thing. I mean, yeah, it's $500, it's expensive, but at least they didn't cheap out with it. It is an all metal base. I like that they have these cuts in the side. That is where you lift the machine on and off. Hey, that's a nice little touch. They could have easily just gone straight across and not rolled this edge over, and you would just had to figure out how to set the machine on. But the fact that they allow you to hold it from under here to lift the machine on and off, that's a nice little touch. And I was totally thinking that these little ribs on the side, you can see these in the promotional materials, I was thinking that these would just be a kind of a plastic molded piece, but they're actually metal and nicely finished. The lettering is nice. It has access doors front, back, and side. Yeah, pretty good overall. Pretty happy with it. So here is what the machine looks like on the riser base, and this is kind of, you know, about the size and the height. It is a big machine and it takes up a lot of space, and that's why I moved this over to the CNC router bed, because it's the only space I have in the workshop that's big enough to hold the machine and have some room in front of it and in back of it, so I can install these little feeder bars for the conveyor. I'm actually going to move it back a little bit, but even still, I'm not going to have that much room for anything really that large. So keep that in mind. If you're going to be using the conveyor, you're going to need a lot of space. The machine is, I think, like 38, call it 40 inches wide. So even if you have a 36-inch deep workbench, moving it 90 degrees on its side for the conveyor feature is going to be a little bit of a trick. And since these don't really have like a stand that will hit down on the floor or anything, it's not like a traditional table saw with an outfeed or infeed. You know, you're going to need to figure out a way to support that. So just something to think about. I know it's maybe kind of obvious, but when you saw the live stream from xTool demonstrating that feed through, they were just doing it on the floor because it takes a huge work surface to be able to have that going on. One of the things that I'm noticing is it doesn't fit as seamless as I thought. And it's on there and the gap is consistent and everything. It's not like wonky, but I was expecting it to kind of perfectly match the contours. I mean, this is a very sleek, beautifully designed machine, and the stand follows a similar aesthetic, but you know, there's kind of this big gap around it and there's kind of big gaps in the side. It just, you know, something to point out if that's something that you care about, but it definitely looks like it's just kind of sitting on a base. But you've got the door in the front that opens up, so when you open up the machine and take out the slats, you can reach down through the inside, and then they have all these slats down the side that I showed earlier to where you can adjust the tray up and down. So you're going to want to use the riser base if you're going to be doing things taller, if you need that extra height, if you're going to be utilizing that curved surface profile thing, if you're going to be doing rotary, you're probably going to want that extra height, and if you're going to be doing the conveyor, you're going to want that. So all of those features, if those are things that you're going to be using the machine for, you're probably going to want the base. So I'm going to do right now, I'm going to hook up the little conveyor and we're going to see how that works. So this is what it looks like to install the conveyor system. You just kind of flip down the front lid, shove it in there, and screw it in place. It's actually pretty straightforward. I think for me, I don't really know what I'm doing with it right now. I'm just kind of playing with it and testing it out. So, you know, I don't really know where the little tracks are supposed to go. I don't know how wide they're going to be because I don't know what piece I'm using with it. So it's a little confusing just to kind of throw together for no real purpose, but yeah, everything works out just fine. So this was fairly straightforward to put together, as you saw. I was thinking it was going to be kind of more built into the machine, but it's really just those 4 screws, and then you can take this thing out, use the machine as normal. A couple little interesting things that I noticed. When you build this, there are these 2 little spacer blocks which are over there. If you want to use this with, I think it's greater than 10 millimeters, it's going to run into the back of the frame. So you actually need to install those spacer blocks to move the whole thing down so that it can clear the frame. So kind of an interesting thing. You have to build it based on the thickness of the material that you're going to be using it. Not a big deal, just something to keep in mind. When you're placing material in it, you want to make sure that it hits the rollers, kind of obviously. Move it in there, line it up with these grid lines on the side, and then we're just going to lower these top rollers on top so it kind of pinches it. All this is described in the manual. And then look at that. We can turn this knob manually and kind of feed it in. Now, a couple things. I am not used to doing this. I've never done this before. I've never had a laser that can do this before. And in the preview mode, it doesn't show you what the material looks like all the way out here, so it's really difficult to judge without measuring it. I'm just testing this. I don't have anything real that I'm trying to do with this, but if you're trying to do something that's a couple feet long, you would just make sure that your model is that big. What I'm getting at is that when it feeds too far in, if it goes past these rollers, it just kind of is loose inside there. It's not attached to the rollers, it's not attached to the movement mechanism. So I was just doing like a long arrow down it, and it would kept feeding. I'm like, oh, it stopped feeding. it went past the rollers. So you just kind of have to know what you're doing, and sometimes testing like this is difficult because I don't really have a real purpose. I'm not trying to do anything real, I'm just trying to play with it. So something to keep in mind. You do have to maybe do a little bit of measurement because the machine isn't going to advance the piece out for the preview, if that makes sense. So let me just kind of feed this in, try and get the camera in here and show you it moving. It definitely does work. It's kind of cool. One little tip, this lid needs to be up for this mechanism to work. Once you close the lid, it's locked, something I learned. So raise the lid up and we'll adjust this. You can also use the autofocus feature. It's a little like kind of reticle laser sight thing. You can use that. That'll measure the autofocus distance, and then that will measure how far away the laser needs to be. So that's pretty cool. So let's get this set up. I'm going to do something really simple. Yeah, probably should have measured it, but went over a little bit. So, hello, this is a test of the auto conveyor feature on the xTool P2 is in, and I wrote some more stuff down there. So yeah, kind of interesting. I still need to play with this quite a bit more. It's just, you know, new tools. You always kind of got to figure out how they work, little quirks and features of them. I think what's happening here is the Y gantry. I need to move that forward closer to it because it's supposed to be engraving here. It was engraving in the back. So yeah, I just got to play with it a little bit more, but it absolutely does move back and forth perfectly fine. The text looks decent. I need to kind of change the feeds and speeds, but a little bit of sanding and that would look great. So yeah, kind of interesting. Kind of like this little thing. It's growing on me. Okay, so I figured out what I was doing wrong. You're supposed to line up the workpiece right along this edge. If you don't line it up along this edge and you kind of line it up here, then the gantry will actually start up here and then you won't have enough for it to all the way feed through. So you line it up right there and then the laser will move all the way to here and then you get the full length because the rollers are, you know, right there. So that's what I was doing wrong. Once I figured that out, it started right at the top and it was able to feed all the way in. So kind of interesting. So yeah, I know I can do screen capture, but it's late and I'm lazy. So here's what the software looks like. You can click refresh and it will do a camera view of everything. So that's happening right now. So yeah, you should be able to see that lined up, and let's just move it forward a little bit just for grins. Click refresh again. You should see this move up a little bit. Cool, so that is where the text is going to be, and you can see it just kind of bleeds off into nothing. And if we zoom, yeah, it just kind of goes, and that's I think 116 inches or something like that. So that is where your text or graphics, whatever you're going to do, is situated. And then we have this capture close view. And this kind of does like a high resolution. So we'll do that in a second here. And that captures a high resolution. So then we can move over to this, and that will allow us to then measure the distance. And this will ultimately be the autofocus. It should be, somewhere around 64, something like that. Oops. Yeah, 64.3, so that's our autofocus. And now if we just go ahead and hit process, this will engrave basically as far down as we go. We just have to calculate from our workpiece how much workpiece we have. So it's actually pretty intuitive. It just takes a little bit of learning because I'm not used to doing anything like this. And unfortunately, you can't really get a camera preview of anything because this is all outside the machine. And I don't know, maybe in the future they could make it to where it could feed into the machine and take camera views, but I don't know. I'm not really sure that is ultimately useful. So yeah, kind of interesting. I learned something today. Hello everyone. This is the portion of the video where we talk about the conclusion and what I've learned. So this has been a long video. It's been pretty sloppy, so I apologize for that. But I want to give you kind of a concept of what's happened behind the scenes in this video. It's been about an hour and a half since I unboxed this conveyor, threw it on the machine, learned the software, read through the manual, figured out all the little kind of nuances of it, and got to a point to where, yeah, I'm pretty confident. If I had a project where I actually needed to run something in and out of it, I would feel confident that I would get a successful result. So that's not too bad, you know, hour and a half. Normally, you would go on YouTube and watch a video and learn from someone else. I don't really have that luxury because this is that video. But yeah, I think overall everything worked the way I thought. It's all intuitive. The stand was super easy to put together, went on top of there. Not really super thrilled that it doesn't blend seamlessly into the actual laser, but that's okay. I've got the rest of the little like slats over here in that nice little storage. Yeah, it's kind of well thought out, well designed, sturdy, and it works the way you would expect. So I don't know, it is what it is. As far as price, that's something that you're gonna have to figure out. I'm sure a lot of people are looking at thinking, oh, that's way too expensive, I would never use it. You'd never use it. For the people that would use this, you're just gonna have to justify the return on investment of this. Is it worth your money for this? And that's something that you gotta figure out. But it does work. It functions the way it was advertised, as far as I can tell. I'm going to be doing more testing on the software side of things, but yeah, no real gotchas. You know, a lot of times, I'm rambling now, but a lot of times when I'm doing these types of videos, it might be the whole weekend that I spend fighting with something, trying to learn, and you know, we go back and forth and do a firmware update, things like that. This has been pretty straightforward. I think it's worked the way it was intended, and there's no real gotchas. It's not like, oh, you can only do 116 inches if. This can theoretically do up to like 14 millimeters at the full length. I think the only caveat to that is you're going to need gobs of space. I don't have that space out in my shop, and I have a relatively big shop. You're going to need a massive footprint for that. But hey, if you're doing that kind of size workpiece, you're probably going to have the space for it. So anyway, that's it. I'm done with this video. In the next video, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the software and kind of showing that off a little bit more now that all the software features are out. We've got the curved engraving, we've got the smart fill. All of that stuff is now in the latest update, so I can actually talk about that. But overall, pretty happy with how all the accessories went. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Check out the links down below. They've got like an Easter sale going on right now. I've got some kind of coupon if you're looking to buy this. You can use those codes. You don't have to, but they will save you some amount of money, and they are time-based, so they will expire, I think something on like the 24th. So be aware of that. Thanks for watching. Check the coupon codes and descriptions and links and all that stuff down below, and see you in the next video.